Hey guys, this is Tailwind, and today I actually want to talk about one of the tools I actually made for Era of Chaos mobile game, namely the UR and SSR diamond cost calculator via the limited time recruitment, limited time covenant, and faction alter pools. I'm going to try and cover a bit more than just the tool here, so if you're only interested directly into the spreadsheet, I'm gonna separate this video into chapters and then you can jump directly to the chapter where I'm actually explaining how to use the spreadsheet and a bit some of the elements behind the scenes like the statistical model. I also have a small cheat sheet here and also some comparisons between these tools that I could basically come up with by doing these tools. Okay, so I'm gonna start a bit with what are SSR units, how you can obtain them, and why is actually this tool something I consider very important. So SSR units and UR units are actually the highest rarity units right now in the game. They are considered to be the most powerful, and they are essential to building really strong formations in game. Every top formations right now use not one or two, but maybe even 4 or 5 SSR or UR units already. And yeah, this is very expensive. And if you're going to be free to play, you're probably going to aim for a bit fewer than those, maybe 2 or 3. And try to really upgrade them and get them to a very nice rank. But yes, in general, they are very important. They are something you want to strategize and think about and aim for if you really want to improve your game. And in regards to how you can do this, unlocking and upgrading them, of course you can rely on chance, or you can take advantage of these limited time recruitment, event, and faction alter that we actually have available now, which allows you to chase basically specific SSRs in comparison with gold keys or SSR shards or souls, or I'm not even sure how they are called, but they are the ones basically you get in the inventory, and once you have 80 of those you can obtain a random SSR. And the problem with random SSRs is that already we have so many of them in game that it becomes very difficult for that particular mechanism to start and aim for something specific and upgrade something specific. And this is why these events are so important. So a little bit about costs. Basically, to unlock an SSR and UR unit, you need 80 tokens. Once you have 80 tokens, you will automatically get that SSR unit at rank 3. Ranks go up to 6. And to get it to rank 4, you need 100, to rank 5, 150 more, and then to rank 6, 200 more. So if we add them up, we will see that these are quite a few that you need, 530 to be exact, to get a unit to rank 6. And the reason you would want to get a unit to rank 6 is to improve its skill levels, because basically increasing the rank increases the level limit for that unit skills. You also improve the unit's base stats and also roster score, of course, among other things. But in parallel with this, units are also getting awakened, and this is also an important mechanism. So once you've obtained your unit and your unit gets some sort of awakening, you also want to consider awakening it. And for SSR units, awakenings are just as expensive, and actually I think these altars are some of the only ways you can actually get them, apart from, of course, the God Store, which if you probably are competing there and you're probably doing this well, this whole explanation doesn't make sense. But anyway, in order to get a unit awakened, you don't need any tokens. You just need to go through a set of quests, and once those quests are complete, then you can unlock the unit. And then once you have unlocked the unit, you can of course unlock the awakening, sorry. You can also increase its awakening rank. Notice that the awakening rank can never exceed the unit's actual rank, so if I want to aim for a 5-star unit awakening rank, I actually need to have that unit at 5 stars in base rank. But in general, this is going to be fine because we will talk now about which awakening ranks are important. So in terms of awakening ranks, the most interesting ones are, of course, getting the unit awakened, the 3-star rank and the 5-star rank. And the reason for this is that at 1, 3, and 5 stars, we unlock one extra ability, awakening ability choice, basically, that you can make for that unit. Now, if you look at the cost, you will see that the difference between 3-star and 5-star is quite significant. We are talking about 250 shards just to get a unit from 3-star to 5-star, while to get it to 3-star you need only 70, which is actually less than to actually obtain that unit. So if we look at it that way, any SSR units you're actually going to use, it's probably a good idea to get them to 3-star. To get them to 5-star, I would say it's super luxurious, and you should aim for it only for very important units like your main DPS or your main tank or something like that. Yeah, so this is about the cost. Now, how do we obtain these tokens, right? It's quite a few tokens. So in order to obtain the tokens, we have two mechanics, two sets of events. One of them is the limited time recruitment / covenant. We call it recruitment. Actually, Ubisoft calls it recruitment for SSR units and covenant for UR units. And we also have the faction altar, which we will see last. So for the limited time recruitment, the idea is that every 2 weeks or 4 weeks, depends, it can be recruitment covenant, it's up to Ubisoft how they are actually scheduling these, but it's always every 2 weeks on Wednesday, and then it goes up to Saturday inclusive that day, that week. Right, so it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, so that's 4 days. And during those 4 days, basically we get a set of specific units and potentially also awakenings. They're always SSR for limited time recruitment events and UR for Covenant. And for those units, basically we get something like this. And we call this SSR altar, for example, or awakening altar. The idea is that we can make pools here, and the only thing we are aiming for here, and it's relevant for us here, are actually shards of that unit. So in this altar that we see here, we see an actual paladin. So this means that for this altar, obviously, I'm doing pools to obtain paladin tokens, like our friend here did, and he got 14 paladin tokens. Now, there are two ways, of course, to do pools, and my recommendation is to always go for the times 10, because the times 10, of course, will get you, we will see a guarantee, and the times 1 anyway is worse value as it is, and you need to pool quite a bit. So we will see once we go into the actual calculations that the times 1 is not even worth looking at, except for the free pool you get every day while this event is happening. Okay, so how does this happen? Basically, the idea here is that whenever you do times 10 pool, you get, I think you get 100 points. Yeah, because for every single pool you get 10 points, so for the times 10 pool, you basically get 100 points. So what this bar down here is telling us is that besides whatever it is that we are getting when doing pools here, we also get to unlock these chests. And these chests actually contain also a number of shards of surprise, the same SSR or SSR unit awakening shards. And here we see that the total number of shards, you can do the math, it's going to be 45. So basically, if you can do something like 17 pools, and yes, I know the cost looks crazy, 17 times 2,700, which is quite a bit, we will see. But yeah, you also get this extra 45 shards. So what people actually do is that they start to save diamonds for the SSR units that are of interest for them, and then when these limited time recruitment events come, they focus their diamonds basically to upgrade their SSR units of their desire, basically suitable for their formations, into these events. Okay, so this is for the limited time recruitment, and limited time covenant works in a very similar fashion. I'm not going to go too much in detail about anything else. There, the idea is that the pools work the same way. Something I forgot to mention, whenever you're doing a times 10 pool here, you're always gonna get for each times 10, so for every 2,700 diamonds, you're gonna get somewhere between 10 and 15 shards of that unit. Apparently, it is also possible to pool a full unit, so basically to get the equivalent of 80 tokens, but this is so rare that I'm actually not even gonna take into consideration. So never aim for that. If you're lucky enough for that to happen to you, congratulations, but you shouldn't be aiming for it, and you shouldn't basically keep it into account. Consider it some sort of jackpot that maybe 1 in 1,000 get. I don't even know what the rate is for that, but it's irrelevant anyway. If it happens, congratulations, you're a super lucky guy or girl or anything in between, and you should really enjoy the moment. Okay, so this is about limited time recruitment. Now, faction altars are something that was introduced more recently, and the idea between the faction altar is that, just like the gold keys altar, every week you can basically again make pools for surprise to 1,700 diamonds, right? To purchase times 10 and basically make 10 pools. Or if you want to do single purchases, go ahead. Though again, I don't really recommend those. And the idea of the faction altar is this is a bit different, right, than the limited time recruitment. Because for the limited time recruitment, we are aiming for some specific shards that happen during specific moments for specific SSR units. The altars are similar in the sense that every week there is a faction week. Maybe next week it's going to be Castle week, and then Stronghold week, and then Necropolis week, and so on and so forth. Again, it's up to Ubisoft how they release these faction weeks. But the idea is that during each faction's week, you can make pools from that faction into the altar. And what does this mean is that you will obtain various things into these altars like SR units, SR unit awakenings, and many other things you can also read about here in the wiki page. What we are actually interested in is that you can obtain some special faction chests. And these faction chests actually allow you to select either SSR tokens or souls. Souls refers basically to tokens for SSR unit awakenings. And it's of course an exchange rate of 1 to 1, so one chest allows you to open one SSR token or soul of your choosing. So basically, if I were to play tower, at this point I should be able to choose between Giant, Naga, Titan, and Naga Queen, right? And here, basically, you aim for chests, and then you convert those chests for yourself into specific tokens. I'm only mentioning this because for some people, if they're doing very nitty-gritty calculations, it can make a small difference. Well, it, of course, for everyone, increases the availability of SSR units and souls, so you don't have to wait for a specific limited time recruitment altar, maybe for something like 5 to 6 months. Which, of course, can take a long time, and basically until that happens, your main team might stagnate quite a bit. And this is why we have these faction altars, basically 10 primary factions, which means every 10 weeks approximately you should see your faction and be able to pull from that particular faction. Okay. Other than that, the number of shards, or in this case chests, you can pull is, I've experienced something like 9 to 12. I'm not completely sure if you can get more than that. You see here, it's between 10 and 15, right? So for the faction altar, it's actually between 9 and 12. So it sounds like a very bad deal, right? But there is a thing that should be mentioned here, that for the faction altar, every 6 times 10 pull, right? So I'm doing 6 pulls times 10. Every 6th pull, you will always get 30 chests, right? So this is much greater than 9, 12. How does this factor in? We will see. But basically, it's something like a PT timer. So in general, we will see that if you're aiming to do pulls in the faction altar during a week, you're probably aiming for at least 6 pulls to take advantage of these 30 chests. And this is important because it seems that this 6 pull guarantee does not carry over from a week's altar to the next week's altar, for example. But it does carry over from a day to another. So if I'm doing pulls today, I don't know, Tuesday, and then I'm doing tomorrow Wednesday or tomorrow Thursday during the same week, so during the same faction altar week, it's fine. You will be able to obtain these 30 chests every 6th pull in that week. Okay. Good. Now, let's talk a bit about the tool. So this was it about the actual events in between and the way you can actually obtain SSR units and unit awakening souls. So in regards to the tool, first things first. We all know now that limited time recruitment, covenant, and faction altar are based on pools and are based on randomness. Okay, so because we're dealing with randomness, very important, just because the tool will suggest something on average, we will talk about the statistical models later on. Doesn't give you a guarantee unless you are doing the absolute worst case calculation that you will require exactly that amount of diamonds, or you will need exactly that number of pools. It's good to get an average, but again, don't blame me or the tool if you get unlucky, or if you get lucky, again, it's your luck or misfortune in either case. But the idea is that, yeah, because we are dealing with luck, of course, any calculations we see here are orientative and just to give you a good idea about how many diamonds you should be saving. But again, because you're dealing with pools and with chance and with randomness, there are no guarantees other than the absolute worst case. Okay, so basically we have to tackle 4 situations. We have to tackle the limited time recruitment for both awakenings and SSR units, and the reason for this is because we saw we need a different number of shards, respectively tokens, to update those units, and then we do the same thing but for the faction altar, right? Keep in mind that you are units, the only way you can obtain them, so like Judicator, Troll is coming, and then some other UR units that we already saw in Chronicles, like the White Tiger and the Regnant Seer and other. And yeah, basically those you can only obtain via limited time recruitment. Actually, limited time covenant, but yeah, anyway. Same mechanic. For the limited time covenant, you can also use the same calculation sheets that you use for the limited time recruitment. Okay, so let's go into these sheets one at a time. For the limited time recruitment, actually this is quite similar. What we will have to do, you have to fill in a few fields. Some of them are quite obvious. So for example, let's say that I have 3-star Archangel, right? And because we are talking about rank, it could just as well be Angel. We are talking about the base unit. Okay, and I want to aim, let's say, to get my Angel to 5 stars. Then for the current rank, I selected 3, and then for the goal, I selected 5. And we already see that the tool calculates for us that on average, we are going to need somewhere, and maybe I should just do the average. Look, the average tells me 17. Okay, but we will talk about the calculation method a bit later. And then maybe you have extra shards, let's say, in your inventory. Maybe I have 35, or let's make it this round 34 angel shards, which means that the calculator can also include those, and then it tells me, okay, dude, you need to save about 40,000 diamonds. Unless we are talking about worst case, and I will go through the statistical models, but anyway, I'm mentioning this now. You can also look at the worst case and see that, okay, worst of the worst, I would need 48,000 diamonds for my needs. But on average, it's going to be maybe about 40,000. So maybe here what I would do is I would say for 16 pools. Maybe even 17 if I'm really, really unsure. And that's about it. So basically you fill in these fields, you're done. We will talk about the calculation method in the next step. If we go to the souls, it is the exact same thing. So let's say I have a 3-star devil, archdevil, sorry, I'm aiming for the 5-star awakening. So then I fill in here, I put 40 shards. I have 40 shards in my inventory, and then the system tells me, hey, you need to make 15 pulls. Did I get 15 here as well? Yeah. Okay. If I don't have any shards, it's gonna ask for this much. The reason why these are very similar is that if we look at the required number of shards between the two, to get a unit from rank 3 to rank 5, or awakening rank 3 to awakening rank 5, you need the exact number of shards. So from this point of view, there is no difference. If I didn't have the unit at all, however, we will see the difference. Because to get a regular unit, you need 62,000. Oh, actually, are we having the same account? Yeah, it's very similar. If I'm aiming for a 3-star, yeah, it's also quite similar. It's a very small difference, but in my opinion, this difference is very important, and of course you want to calculate as close as possible to what it is you're aiming for. And this is why we have both the sheets here, okay? Next, we have the faction altar, and there it's exactly the same field, exactly the same thing you want to fill, so just, I don't know, input if you want, let's say, let's go from rank 3 to rank 5. And let's see what this tells me. So this tells me I need 19 pools. Let's do the average. So it tells me I need 19 pools. And if I go back and I compare, right, from 3-star to 5-star, I need 17 pools. So we can already see that the limited time recruitment actually looks better than the faction altar. But as I already mentioned, the faction altar is much more available. So yeah, it's a matter of tempo if you need something faster versus if you have the time to basically wait to get it for a slightly cheaper price. And this is usually the case. I actually made a quick cheat sheet for you guys. And we can see here that for the standard rankings, I will explain this auto in the next chapter, let's say, of the video. But basically the idea here is that we can see a quick comparison between this is for the limited time recruitment and this is for the faction. And then below we also have a comparison. So we see that in general, limited time recruitment is a bit better, about one pool on average better, while the faction altar is, yeah, for the awakening we see here a small difference, right? Because from 2-star to 5-star it's actually a bit more worse to go with the faction altar. But again, this can differ greatly, so to get it best, my recommendation for you guys is just go into the specific sheets and try it yourselves, right? So for whatever it is that you need, make a copy of this spreadsheet and then just start playing on your copy with the values that you want. If you're super lazy or it's a new unit, you can also use the quick cheat sheets that we have here. Okay. Now, let's talk a bit about the statistical model. For the statistical model or the calculation method, we actually have 6 options here. Behind the scenes, there are 5 basically statistical models. Okay, so the idea is that we saw that every altar, like if we look again at the limited time recruitment, we saw that you can get anywhere between 10 and 15 shards. Okay, this is something we know. We assume this is evenly distributed, though to be frank, we don't even know that either. It could be that maybe, I don't know, 11 shards is something you pull the most often. But on average, in general, this seems to have worked for us, assuming that they are about evenly distributed. So every pull you have an equal chance to get 10 shards or 13 shards or 14 shards or whatever. And then the problem comes, okay, if I have this range in between which I can get shards, how many shards should I assume that I'm going to get per pull? And there are multiple ways to go at this. The simplest, of course, is to just go and say, I'm going to take the average, right? So what's the average between 10 and 15? Well, it's 12.5. So this is the statistical average. I'm going to assume on average I get 12.5 shards. And this is what the actual average does. It tells me, hey, about 12.5 shards you will get per pool. Okay, but very often when people are dealing with chance, they feel a bit, let's say, pessimistic about it. And in this case, and it's of course better to be a bit safer with your savings, just so you don't end up in that situation. Well, I saved for exactly 17 pools and god damn it, I needed 18. So in this case, we can be a bit pessimistic. And what happens here is that we are rounding down this average, not to be 12.5, but to be 12, which is slightly worse. So I'm slightly less fortunate than the average. And again, at this point, as long as we are dealing with a sufficient number of pools, this should be good enough. If you guys are interested, by the way, in reading a bit about the law of large numbers, it actually does a really good, it offers a very good explanation on actually how this works, how as you are doing more and more and more and more pools, you're getting very close to this average. But of course, that a small number of pools, you can be very far away from the average. Let's say if I'm doing only 5 pools, it is more likely to be extremely unfortunate than if I'm doing 30 or 50 or 100 or 1,000 pools. So based on this, I would look at this pessimistic as something good enough if you are doing a sufficiently large number of pools. Now, statistically, what sufficiently large sounds, of course, is much larger than what we can afford to do here. But yeah, in my opinion, if you're already doing 5 or 10 or 15 pools, you can start to look at this model. If you're being a bit optimistic, you can also take the average to be 13. And what I'm doing here, of course, is I'm rounding up the average. So in this case, I'm not assuming 12.5, I'm assuming I'm a bit luckier than the majority. And therefore, I'm saying, hey, I'm going to get 13 pools, 13 shards per pool. Now, if we go to the extremes would be that I expect the worst case, so that's the absolute minimum number of shards the game ensures that I'm going to get, and that's 10 shards. Okay, and if this happens, then at the absolute worst, in this case from 3 to 5 ranking, I need 21 pulls. Okay, so I'm going to expect that I'm going to get unlucky every single time. Honestly, I think this is close to impossible, so the chance of this happening is super, super, super minimal, especially once you start needing so many pulls, right? I need like 25 raw pulls. That's, wow. Okay, 21, because we're assuming the chest as well. But still, at 21 pulls, to always pull 10 shards, that's super, super unrealistic too. But if you want to see the absolute maximum number of diamonds you actually need for your goal, then you can of course look at the worst case. On the other hand, if you look at the best case, we are always assuming, and this is again not gonna happen, that every time that you're pulling, you're gonna get 15 shards per pull. This is also super highly unlikely. And in this case, you would need only 15. So what these calculation methods actually help us to see some sort of limits. And you're gonna be somewhere in between. If you're doing very few pulls, so let's say I'm doing something like 3 pulls or 5 pulls, or I need that many, maybe it's best to be pessimistic. Maybe I'm gonna get unlucky. Maybe it's not gonna be 10 every time, but I'm gonna pull something like 10, 10, 11. And then it's a good idea to be pessimistic, to consider the worst case, not even the pessimistic case, but the absolute worst. Because it's so few pulls, you can get very unlucky or very lucky. So it's best to be safe. And for this reason, I have inserted a fixed mode, which is called auto. So what auto does is that we see here now that if on average I need 21 pulls, this is gonna assume that I'm gonna need 12 shards per pull. But if I'm gonna assume I want to get directly to rank 3, and let's say I have here 30 shards, suddenly the system says, okay, I need to make 5 pulls. 5 is quite a small number, so let's be super pessimistic about it and assume the worst. And in this case, it's gonna automatically calculate for you that you need 10 shards per pull, okay? So this is just something to help you compensate for bad luck. If you feel like you're a bit luckier than general, I would probably go to the pessimistic or average. But to be very honest, I would never use the best case, and I would say even the optimistic. Although some people in the community I know like to use the optimistic, I prefer to be more on the safer side. Okay. And this is about the modes. And of course we have the same modes in the faction altar as well, which for the faction altar, it is important to notice that, again, even though you can get very unlucky, and the worst case was like what, nine chests per pull, it is still important here to notice that every 6th pull you are still gonna get those 30. And this is something the spreadsheet takes into consideration. Okay, so the spreadsheet, keep in mind, takes into account automatically for you these chests, and also from the faction altar, these always 30 chests on your guaranteed 6 pull. Okay, so that's the whole magic behind the scenes, so you don't have to deal with this. Finally, let's talk about comparisons. And when I talk about comparisons, I'm going to look a bit at the full analysis, and this is just to give you an idea. So this is again assuming you have no shards in the inventory. To calculate what's best for you, in my opinion, you should look at what is your situation and what makes sense for you. But if you want to make this comparison, like assuming that you're gonna need to do this many, you're gonna need this many shards, right? This actually goes, and I've done a graph for basically any number of shards between 0 and 530. I'm gonna assume you're not going into potential area here where you're pulling for unit potential. And in this case, we can actually see a comparison how many pulls you need to get that many number of shards, right? And I've done this for the faction altar and for the limited time recruitment as well. And I assumed here the pessimistic. So I didn't assume the worst case, but I did assume that you're gonna pull 10 shards for the faction altar and 12 for the limited time recruitment. And if you want, of course, again, you can make a copy and play with this. And in this case, we can actually see that the faction altar in blue, the limited time recruitment in red, the limited time recruitment bar tends to be below with some small exceptions here, right? And what this tells us is that, because you need fewer pools, fewer is better, right? Because fewer translates into fewer diamonds you have to pay. It means that in general, the limited time recruitment altar wins. It's better, but it's not better by much, right? The difference here we see, and very often the faction altar catches up to it, thanks to those 30 extra chests. We can actually assume that neither of them are a super bad deal, but if you're into optimization and you are hoarding or hamstering, how the community calls it, then in that case, you can of course decide that, hey, I'm gonna wait for the next limited time recruitment because I'm planning to do a lot of pools. But again, a lot of pools doesn't necessarily add up after a certain threshold, because limited time recruitment stops at 17 pools. One thing the sheet doesn't do is if you're aiming for something like, let's say, a UR unit, and for UR units, what I forgot to mention was that you're not going to pull actually shards here, but you're going to pull some scrolls, which you can exchange for the specific UR unit that you want, which right now it's going to be only the unit whose week we have in the altar, but that can change. But the idea is that some people, in order to save more and to make it cheaper, they're actually pulling up to 17 chests for those UR units, and they are saving up. And then eventually when their unit comes, basically these adds up so nicely that you can get the unit basically cheaper. If you're aiming, I don't know, for 6 stars, for example. And this is a trick you can also try to save some diamonds, but in my opinion, this is relevant only for your units. If you're going for regular SSR units, this is not feasible because you're going to have to wait a long time to get the same unit again after, I don't know, 6 months or something. And honestly, we don't even know if after 6 months that unit is still going to be relevant, right? So it's going to be relevant, but maybe not as impactful. So my recommendation here is make a copy of the spreadsheet, input your values, and do the comparison for yourself. So like I did here, you can do the same computation for the limited time recruitment and then for the faction altar and see which is better for you. And if you consider that the faction altar is here and you don't know if the unit is going to come in the next 3 months, and you could really take advantage of the unit and go for the unit. And this is also a very good planning tool for you, so you can actually plan when in the future, I don't know, we are waiting for Angel to come again, let's say, we don't know when, we hope maybe in 3 or 4 months. Okay, how much would I need to save? And also for the faction altar, which we know comes every 10 weeks anyway. Okay, and that's about it. Of course, if you have any questions, I've left my Discord here. I'm gonna leave it also down below into the description. Please feel free to use this tool. I really hope it will help you guys. If you notice any problems, bugs, issues like Lyria did here, Lyria, thank you so much for helping me fix those. And yeah, basically, if there's anything you need, feel free to write to me, and I hope to be able to help you. Thanks a lot, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye.